there began to develop around the country more and more organizations, grassroots organizations that were pushing for this, and so that effort continued. But at that time, there really was not an institution here in the Washington area that was devoted full time to the promotion of this approach to agriculture. So that was what led to the Institute for Alternative Agriculture being established in 1983, to try to provide a voice, if you will, and to try to keep alive the notion that the federal government has some responsibility in this area, to begin to look at policy options and needs, and to just simply be a presence, an institutional presence. Now, since 1983, of course, there are many, many organizations, both nationally and locally, that have developed into very viable organizations that, to one degree or another, have included sustainable or alternative, what has come to be called sustainable or alternative agriculture, in their agendas. So I would say there's a fairly solid amount of institutional support around this city now. But that certainly wasn't the case in 1983.
No, but support for your beginning, the Institute, must have come from way beyond the Beltway.
Well, not so far, really, in terms of financial support. There was other kinds of support from the grassroots. In fact, many phone calls were made to grassroots representatives of organic farming organizations and sustainable ag groups to see whether they felt there was a need for this sort of an organization. But the financial support to start the Institute came from Mrs. Jean Wallace Douglas of the Wallace Genetic Foundation, who had been a long-time supporter of this and still is to this day, and was able to help us launch this organization, and has been with us ever since, and is our honorary president yet today.
Did the idea for the Institute occur to you when you were still employed at USDA, or did it come about as a...
Well, I had intended to be at USDA, so I didn't think much about an institute at that time, but it was clear to me in my role there that there just were no national institutions here to interact with. Now, the Rodale organization did have a Washington representative at that time by the name of Sarah Ebenreck, but for various reasons that operation had been closed down in early summer of 1982. So there literally was no institutional presence here at the time that I left USDA.
So you had been aware of the lack of one, but it didn't occur to you that you would be the person involved in starting one. It must have been quite a challenge, that transitional period.
Yes, it was. It's been a challenge, and it remains a challenge, because most of our funding comes from foundations. And as everyone knows who's ever tried to maintain a place from those sources, foundation priorities change. They evolve. Personnel changes and turns over. So it's a constant challenge to try to remain in touch with those foundations who are interested in this kind of issue. And of course, in 1983, there were not very many foundations who had sustainable agriculture on their agenda. One of the first things I did was look through the foundation directory, if you've ever done that. It's a book about that thick. And at that time, we could only find one or two that had agriculture in their description and in their list of priorities. And these were not sustainable agriculture necessarily.